SHFT was built to support governments and to support the entire region to create tomorrow's games that are inspired from Middle Eastern culture, that tell stories from the Middle East, that leverages the huge amount of young talent that is almost around 70% of our population today, and its creativity in building the new content and IP that I believe global consumers are hungry for.
Welcome everyone to this special episode of SHFT GAMEON podcast. SHFT is the sector-focused arm of Shorooq Partners, which focuses on industries that are driving tomorrow's economy. At SHFT, we build incubators, accelerators, and investor programs to develop ecosystems of talent, startup, and investors around industries of focus. Today is a very, very special episode, and we have partners from Shorooq Partners and GAM Capital, and we will have a quick chat about investments when it comes to games. A quick intro, today we have Shane Chin, who is a Forbes 30 under 30 and the co-founding partner at Shorooq Partners. Shorooq Partners is the leading tech investor in the Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. They are on a mission to partner with exceptional founders in tech, build enduring businesses, and generate unparalleled returns to all partners. Thank you so much, Shane, for coming in and joining us.
Thank you. By the way, I was 430 under 30 a long time ago. It's not anymore. So, I just hope that the people don't think Shane is still 30s. But I was lucky and privileged to be that many years ago. So thank you.
Updates happen very quick. Thanks, Shane. We also have Tarek Fouad, who is a partner at Shorooq Partners, and he's a driving force behind the region's first ever game accelerator. Thank you so much, Tarek, for making time.
Thank you, Zebo.
We also have managing directors from GAM Capital. It's Roman Gursky and Kirill Gursky. So GAM Capital is an international investment company that operates in private equity and venture capital markets, and it's known to be one of the world's most active investors in games. They are globally investing, but with a particular focus on Eastern Europe, Cyprus, and Middle East. Welcome to the show, Roman and Kirill, and thank you so much for making the time.
Hi guys, thank you so much for inviting us here. Let's start.
Thanks, Zebo. It's like we're honored to be here.
Amazing, thank you.
Our honor.
Let's probably start off with a question to Shane about Shorooq Partners' investment philosophy. We'd love to hear about the specific factors that attract Shorooq Partners to invest in early-stage gaming startups. Why does Shorooq Partners have offices across the region, and how has a dedicated team in those core markets developed?
Thank you, Zebo, and really, it's such an honor. Very excited to talk about gaming and investments, which I think investment is fun, gaming is even more fun. So that's really what it drives us. Team, why are we interested in gaming, particularly across the world, but really in the Middle East? Because we're the first VC and investment firm focused on gaming. I think I can summarize as a principle. At least I'm not a genius, so I believe to really invest in asymmetrical companies, you got to be the first one to stay as the number one. So we believe regional gaming scene is already up and coming, and I truly believe it's going to be one of the largest driving force within the Middle East. And Middle East, as you can see already, is becoming a global player. So we want to be the first ones dedicated and focused in investing in the best founders in gaming in the region. We understand it's up and coming, so meaning that it's right before the inflection point. But we want to have a dedicated team like Zebo, like Tarek Fouad, and my partner here, so that we are the leading founders partners in gaming across the journey, so that when the gaming becomes like fintech here in the Middle East. We are their preferred partner, and we have been investing since then. So that's really why we're very, very excited. Again, the tagline is you gotta be the first one to stay as number one. That's by definition as number one if you're on the first one. So that's why we love gaming. We saw it from Korea, from the US, and we know how this is tens of billions of dollars industry, and we're very, very excited to back the founders shaping the gaming industry of the future.
Thank you, Shane. I love your quote about first one to be number one. So it's great. Maybe Roman and Kirill, one of you could share about what led Gem Capital to have the particular focus on Eastern Europe, Cyprus, and the Middle East.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for this question. We never made a statement like that. Yeah, the one that Shane just made. But anyway, it's quite close to the one, since we honestly were not the first investor focusing on Eastern Europe, but we were one of the first, and maybe the first, not corporate VC. Since in the region so far, they're like, for a couple of years before Gem entered this scene, there were a number of investors, and the major one was and still is MGVC, My Games Venture Capital, but that's a corporate one. Then Gem was established back in 2019. I mean, the games division, yes, when we started to invest in games. And after that, a number of our partner funds also were established in a couple of years, but yet we were one of the first. The reason behind that, I would say that there were a number, definitely. I would say the first one is competitive budgets with the same overall quality of development. Since the same quality can be achieved with lower budgets in Eastern Europe. I would say roughly it's up to 3 times less cost compared to the studios from the US or Eastern Europe, with quite a competitive quality overall. That's the first one. The second, I already mentioned it, touched it partly. Since we were one of the first investors, there were not obviously so many investors in the region. And once there are not so many investors in the region, the overall competition for great targets was also quite well. It was not so competitive compared to other industries. Gem for a long time was a generalist VC, so we were not targeting any particular like games industries. Yeah, and we had experience in other industries as well, and some of them were quite entertaining ones. But anyway, what I mean is that in some of the most competitive ones, the overall quality of a fund manager can be measured not by the quality of analysis, by whether you can get allocation in the targets or no. So
it's like the fintech that Shane mentioned, like the overhyped ones.
Yeah, that was not a thing in game. So even the most high quality companies, they were not so many options where to go to. That's the second, and I would name maybe the third one. It's also compared to other industries. It is always hard to become global player. Yeah, so any company in any industry, if it wants to get revenue from the US, from Eastern Europe, from Western Europe, or whatever, from Korea and so on, it's very complicated task. Yes, it's not so easy. In games, you just need to release a game once it is on whatever, it's a PC console game, on Steam, on PS, on Xbox. It can be played anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. So I would say those are the 3 major ones.
Yeah, thank you, Raman. And talking about the scale and whether it's global or regional, Tarek, I was wondering about what are the unique opportunities and challenges when it comes to gaming, specifically in the MENAP, and what are the trends that you are seeing in the market? Where do you think the founders are going, and where is more capital, and how does Shift play in this ecosystem?
Thank you, Zebu. I'll break the questions down there, like the 4 or 5 questions into one. But following what Roman and Shane have said, to a big degree, the gaming investment landscape is still nascent, I would say. Like globally, as much as there are hundreds of thousands of VCs playing a sector agnostic play, there aren't many that are in the gaming scene and focused in the gaming scene. And I think those who understand the gaming scene will really appreciate how it is a totally different industry altogether. So if you've got used to seeing fintech, health tech, and a lot of the other sectors, and all of a sudden you're seeing a gaming company, you'll find that you'll find it extremely hard to actually assess um, how what a good gaming company would stand for, and how do you compare a shooter game versus another shooter game, right? So I think it is one of the very interesting sectors that do require this depth sector knowledge, and hence why probably similar to what Gem Capital has done. A gaming division was created under Shorooq Partners, that Shane, myself, you, Zebo, and Sally kind of lead on, and I think this is first, acknowledgement of the space and its importance. So globally, from day one, I would say I always remind people that games are a universal language, right? You don't need to learn Korean to play a Korean game. Even if you don't know Korean, you'll eventually learn it from the game. It is play, the power of play being a universal language in itself makes this sector extremely global from day one. And that's an opportunity that I don't believe is shared with so many other sectors, right? And because the amount of VCs playing in that sector are today very limited, I think this is a major opportunity for global VCs to kind of open an eye to that sector and start kind of investing in this. One of the things that people don't realize is that founders in the gaming scene forever have been used to bootstrapping and building
That's
businesses
true.
from scratch, right? Like venture capital came in too late into this play.
Love
And
the humbleness. Exactly, the founders, great founders. Love it.
absolutely, you're right. And we see founders, been for years building successful positive EBITDA companies. Now, obviously, with VCs coming in, we can potentially fast forward this industry into cloud gaming and quantum computing gaming and AI and all of the other sectors, and kind of fast forward and leap this sector forward. So I believe there's tons of opportunities to build the tomorrow's platforms, right? Tomorrow's platforms are not your Facebooks or your TikToks. Tomorrow's platforms are actually games, right? This is where people are engaged and interactive, and this is an opportunity that we see in the Middle East, but globally. Now, being in the Middle East, I think I echo where Shane is coming from. It's just something that we can say that probably you can say in Europe or in maturer markets, right? That gaming in the Middle East, it's no news. We weren't known for game development. We're amazing consumers, and we can critique games really well, but for developing games, we're quite nascent, right? And to find a VC that is willing to take that risk up front and to understand that space really well, the past 2 years we were playing alone. And I think Shane and I would remember when we started this journey, people labeled us as crazy. Like, what, you must be nuts to play in the gaming scene. What gaming scene? There is no gaming scene in the Middle East. And I bet Shane has tons of stories to say here. But it is true, right? We were playing alone. KSA came in later with its 2030 vision, and gaming being one of the
Yeah, yeah.
centers, parallel sectors there. So Shift was built to support governments and to support the entire region to create tomorrow's games that are inspired from Middle Eastern culture, that tell stories from the Middle East, that
Yeah.
leverages the huge amount of young talent that is almost around 70% of our population today, and its creativity in building the new content and IP that I believe global consumers are hungry for, right? And I think that is why we've built Shift as an incubator and accelerator of young talent globally. And fast forward 2 years, today we've incubated more than 200 plus companies from all around the world. I would say easily 40-50% of them are placed in KSA and UAE and Egypt and Pakistan, core markets where Shorooq Partners are leading in. And to accompany that with a dedicated vertical and investment vertical that invests globally, I think is the major drive force here that we're totally excited about.
Yeah, thank you, Tarek. And just a shameless plug here, Shift has reports, quarterly reports, which are coming up. The next one will be very soon as well. So go to our Shift website, Shift Build, and you can see the previous
Doing right now.
as well. Yeah.
It's shift.shorooq.com.
Zibo is so well trained. We didn't ask her to do this, but thank you for. It's not a sponsor, but thank you.
Who's not necessarily on this call has trained her really well. Well done.
That's true proficiency.
I'm guessing the next question could go to like Kirill and so Gem Capital is known for having one of the largest investment portfolios. And how do you think VCs identify ventures with the potential to become game changers in the gaming industry?
So that's an extremely cool question. And basically, the honest answer is that each case is unique. And I think that like all the guys and any gaming investor would agree with me on this point. What the first thing always to look at is the founders, the team, and vision. So these are the three main and fundamental things that drive success of any future successful gaming company. It's always about the founders, it's always about the team, it's always about the vision. It's important to understand that creative, like any creative industry, stands out a lot from other spheres in which gaming VC invests. And all creativity, it's always about people, right? And the same applies to games, right? It's always about founders. It's always about people, and that's like three major things that we look at. It's always about the dreamers, right? The guys who think big, the guys who set long-term goals, the guys who want to build something completely new, right? To give you a case, there are things that we don't look at, like one of the cases, right? About a year or 2 years ago, there was this extremely hyped Merge 2 thing. I think the guys understand what I'm going to talk about. And many gaming VCs invested in 2 or 3 companies involved in this Merge 2. We stand out of this hype, and the reason is that if the company is doing something that is hyped, if it's doing something that everyone is doing, that's continuing the idea of Shane at the very beginning. You need to be the first to be number one, and that's extremely strong and cool thesis. You need to be first to be number one, and that's the companies that we want to back. That's the companies that we want to support. The dreamers, the guys that do something that can disrupt the industries. It can be both in content, it can be both in games related services, but anyway. So one of the hot topics is IDFA challenge now, and we have in our portfolio companies that want to that are working on beating this issue. But whoever solves IDFA issue will be the next Google, the next Amazon, the next heavy gorilla on the market, and that's the companies to support. But it also applies to the content side. right? For example, we invested in Manfish. Manfish are the guys who made Atomic Heart, right?
Yeah.
And you can see that from the very beginning that what you guys are doing, it's completely unique. So
Trended right away in the bookstores.
precisely,
Well done.
precisely.
Yeah, yeah.
I can ask anyone. Can you like name a company that that was built from scratch and create as a first game the AAA project? Can you name one? So that's the one. There are not that much, probably like 1, 2 in the world, and that's one of the cases. So to
Done an
summarize, it's
amazing
always
job.
about people. It's always about people, and it's always about dreamers. It's always about like potential and trying to build something completely new, something that will stand out, something that will, after all, give you like place in the like glory hall of the games industry.
Thank you, Kirill. I'd like to stay with the point about leadership teams and people a bit more. So, Shane, in your view, how do you spot the outliers and what are the qualities in the teams that you look for?
Whew. I think this is something probably we're reflecting on, frankly, every hour or so. So normally the word we use is I want to differentiate good crazies versus a bad crazy. So we're constantly looking for people who really are, of course, right vision. But we tend to believe at Shorooq that the idea is actually not the most expensive. Most expensive is the execution. So we're constantly vetting the people who not only have the vision, but really are extremely obsessed with A plus execution, right? Of course, the market has to be on the right trajectory. So growing market is, of course, way important than like declining market. If I'm trying to invest in a declining market, we need to really be convinced why this is the right investment thesis, but execution driven, but also again being the first one. But the founders grabbing the first one, that they need to also know how to crack it. But I can always say something crazy and I can be the first one. But how can I really, if it is regulatory risk, how can I overcome the regulatory risk? If I was my unique water market, right? What's the uniqueness? But at the end, everyone has to really be a good crazy to really create a really well-respected company, and that's really our job. Something we also try to care a lot about is, are they coachable? Right? No one is perfect. Like I'm definitely not perfect, and that's why we try to back team of founders, not just a sole founder. Although we have backed sole founder before, but generally we prefer numerous founders. 2 to 3 is normally the best because that also teach someone to be humble and also coachable. So like that, those are really really key.
Yeah.
Actually, Zebo, on this point, I think it's quite, to a degree, easy to figure out who's coachable or not a bit later at their journey, right? When they've had enough exposure, life slaps them a couple of times in the face. But at a very early stage, it's even harder. So when it comes to, let's say, Shift as an incubator and accelerator, with all those young people coming in, everyone's ego is up in the sky, and that's normal. We were all like this at some point in time, and I think it is very important to be able to, at this stage, filter quickly the ones that are going to be coachable from those that are not, and we utilize a lot of the different metrics and tactics within the program that kind of gives us a sense of, okay, this seems like a person who would eventually grow to be a leader, where they would kind of harness in input from the team, harness input from investors, and so on. And I think that kind of complexity at a very early stage would also add tons of USP, or I would say arbitrage, to VCs that can harness that early on. If I can find a founder at pre-seed stage that have never built a company before, that I don't know whether or not they will be coachable at Series A or Series B, but I know it from now using a bit of data, I think that gives leverage, tons of leverage and uniqueness to a VC that can identify that. And in all fairness, even if they're coachable now, will they be coachable after Series B or C? Money changes people somehow, right?
They do.
Especially creative people.
Especially creative people. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's already tons of ego in play, right?
Yeah.
One more problem with that, the one just mentioned, Tarek, is that games companies, for a game company, it's much harder to become a business compared to any other VC. So when any other general business, look at Amazon, yeah. Once you have any grocery store, whatever, any business, a company becomes a business when you don't need any particular man to run it. Yes, so we can just shift management. It's still operating. Then it's a business. In game companies, it's much harder to achieve, since you always have that one mastermind behind all the creative ideas. And for a company to become business, you need to create something that would help you to replace the overall creativity.
Beautiful.
And it's very hard to achieve.
Yeah, the Christopher Nolan for games, right? You need
Yeah.
the Christopher Nolan for games
So
to
what
make
is
it.
the company of Christopher Nolan? I don't know how it is called yet, but what it is without Christopher Nolan? Yeah, what is it? It's nothing. In some of the games companies, it is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's let me also jump in here for a bit with one more idea, and that's why it's always a good thing to have at least two founders in the gaming company, right? Because in creative industry, there is always risk to be spoiled by either success or failure, right? So each man is vulnerable to something. Each has its own poison, right? Either you achieve great success and one of the founders goes Breaking Bad. Just there is always such risk, and you always, as an investor, you need to consider it, to mitigate it, and that's a very, very cool point that the guys raised.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kim, for sharing. Yeah, go
We
ahead.
generally use the word that we like to back the founders with a mission, because if you're really driven by some other things other than your true sincere mission, and that mission then it really starts to have these issues where founders change just because they're more popular or have more money, or once your creativity is not accepted by others, you really either lose confidence or you completely become denying others feedback. So all these things have an issue. So the right way to really describe what we're looking for is founders with a mission to really get to somewhere. That is where we get really excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Shane. And talking about impact and founders, how do you think VCs have the distinction between the global impact and the regional, and knowing the regional context? So how do you know when it's the right time to move on and become global? And maybe anyone could go
Yeah, I was curious. Is that to
To everyone.
to everyone.
Let me start. Basically, the idea is that, the way I see it, probably guys will add additional points. In gaming, you always need, even before starting your own company, to think of it as something global. There is no point in building a gaming company which focus on at inception at some region. For example, there is no need in building a company like the Cyprus Fund, right? That focuses extremely on Cypriots. So there is no reason in doing so. You always need to be global.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you always need to be global. You need to be global, in your mindset from the very beginning, and that's the point that distinguishes games industry.
Kirill, just follow up here. How do you think the companies can go global and think about becoming global since day one, taking into account the context of localization and the context of the region itself?
These are more technical issues. So obviously, these are the things that shall be dealt with. But anyway, Anyway, like localization, all this stuff, it's like it's the business that's dealt with very easily, and like any gaming companies, any gaming company like does deal with it. It's not
I
like
think maybe,
it's not like a strategic thing. It's not like a mission thing, right? Uh,
yeah, yeah.
I,
I think, yeah. Go
sorry,
ahead, Jim. Yeah.
what I wanted to say is I fully agree. Gaming by nature is truly global, especially nowadays. Like we were just talking in the beginning of this podcast that Shane, like who is a Korean, we grew up like playing StarCraft. Like StarCraft has nothing to do with Korea, to be honest. It's just like there's not a single Korean word. Like there's not even a Korean like Marines like in StarCraft. But it was just
I'll give you a secret. We also grow up playing StarCraft.
yes, like it changed, but it changed our life, right? The whole really, I don't know how many hours I spent on StarCraft. I think I would have done a Harvard PhD if I didn't play StarCraft by now. But it really is a transferable. I think Zebo. But to respond to you, what I care a lot about is how do you, if you wanna go global, but do you still have a go-to-market strategy on how to make your game successful in each region or each country? For example, selling a StarCraft in Korea and Saudi might be very, very different. Then, like, how would you actually target building a business in Saudi, building a business in Cyprus or the US or China, Japan, and Korea? All big markets, all different. Like and you need to really be thoughtful on articulating how you're going to do. Otherwise, no matter how many hundreds of millions of dollars you have on the marketing budget, you're not going to be successful. But if you have $10 million, $5 million, where are you going to use? How are you going to go to utilize that resource, constrained resource, to build your business? And 20 years ago, when there was no word called esports, like a Korea coined that term esports 20 years ago, literally. But now it is much more competitive scene. So and the resource is so precious. How do you want to use that? At which country, which region, and how? I think that's what we need to understand as a regional context.
Mhm.
Spot on.
Developing this whole idea about the regional context about I completely agree with both of you, with Kirill and Shane, but I would also want to like highlight another good part of that, complexity of being global while also trying to be like local at some points. Likely for all the Western games industry, the Chinese developers they do struggle to create a product that would be like really popular worldwide. I mean, in Western world, and likewise, Western developers they struggle to develop a product that will be popular in China. There are not so many of those, and I would say the Western developers they are quite lucky that it is like that because otherwise, if Chinese developers would know this, touch how to get the Western players, they would destroy the Western market because their developing budget they are much more competitive. They can develop the same quality games with much lower budgets, and we are lucky that this regional touch is a thing.
Yeah, good point.
Very good point. And I think, over to your question, Zebo, there is this context of localization from a founder's perspective and them expanding to other regions, but there is also the context of it from an eye of an investor and those who invest in games. So when you take a look at, as VCs, we obviously have our fiduciary duties towards our LPs. And not all LPs are created equally, and not all of them have the same, missions, I would say. So, would an investor, let's say in UAE or Saudi or Egypt, have the same mission as an investor who invests in games in the U.S. market, right? And I think this is where things becomes slightly different. So, from if you put an investor hat on, right? what are the things, the context that from a localization perspective you need to take into consideration to be able to speak to local LPs and understand these markets and understand these missions, right, and what they would want to achieve out of investing in games would
Yeah.
be very different to if your LPs elsewhere, right? So I think this is where it becomes extremely different. But from a gaming perspective, right, and expanding to global markets, as we were early saying, games are a universal language. Since we're kids, we learn by playing. So it's a good thing that, inherently in the business model itself, it's global from day one.
Yeah.
But if you would want to, grab market share from different markets, this is where then you kind of fine tune that, uh, you know, uh, fine tune your knobs to be able to capture more in Saudi and so on and so forth through localization tactics. But it comes at a later stage, right?
Thanks, Tico. And when it comes to the future or like future predictions in the gaming industry, Kirill, what do you think? What will be the upcoming trends over the next few years?
Oh, it's easy. It's AI. Thanks for question. So the easiest one is for me. So yeah, basically, writing a podcast in 2023 and not touch it AI would be like extremely strange. So
Yeah.
obviously, the next big thing is AI, and the way it is changing the games industry, and it's happening now. Like the majority of our portfolio companies, if not all, are already using old or like the very many tools that are on the market now. So you need to adapt to be number one. So that's essential. You need to change. You need to change. You need to adapt. It's crucial. It's crucial for surviving, right? And all the processes are changing. So everyone is using the chat GPT now. Everyone is using the generative AI, all the things. It will change the industry. The impact is crucial. So, like, just imagine what Nvidia showed us, right?
Yeah.
The NPCs that can just talk to you, right? So there is no. So we just now we go from these just multi-box choosing options just to talking to the NPCs. Isn't it great, right? Come on, like
Absolutely.
I think we were like all of us as like patient gamers, we all dreamed of these options like when we were kids. But like I honestly believe that we never expected it to happen when we're still alive. Like, come on, it's magic. It's just pure magic, and it is
It's
happening,
scary.
right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, NPCs that can talk to you, right? Even think of gameplay that can adapt to each individual, right? For example, a horror game. I play horror game and I'm very afraid of the horrors. Then the gameplay will adapt to be just as scary as it should be just for me. So that I don't have a heart attack, play the game, and for the
Yeah.
guys that are just heavy fans of all
Nice.
these scary stuff, it just makes the game extremely frightening for them. Just a lot of these skins and so on. So I think guys also want to add to this point because it's extremely hot topic. I
Yeah.
don't want to be the only one talking about it.
No.
I mean, certainly AI, how they're also impacting the game's like infrastructure level, like on developing to live ops, DevOps. There's just so many things to talk about, and frankly, it is really sweeping across the whole layer. Zebo, another I think big topic, perhaps is a bit of a taboo to talk about, is also on how game companies are layering in a Web3 angle. Like 2 years ago, everyone was so excited about Web3. Frankly, every mom and pop gamer, I mean, game developer was trying to add a tokens piece. Now, we all learned that, I mean, they paid a price, but still, many serious guys are they didn't give that up. And I think many serious guys are trying to come up with smart ways to add a Web3 layer to their games. So I think AI and the Web3 is really the future, because the Web3, what it really enables is, in the past, like just a pure web, it has always been one-way street. Like developers create their games, content creators create their content and just release the info. Now with Web3, we're receiving the feedback. People are creating their own games. It's really multi-dimensional communication channel. And game, like one thing about gamers, we're very passionate. We have a view, on how to play the game, how to add the map, how to create a scenario. And I think Web3 is a good way to do that through use of blockchain, and perhaps even to the extent of using tokens to vote, to communicate. But no one really, I don't think the verdict is clear. So that really is AI and the blockchain or Web3. Those are the big topics. I'm sure all the sophisticated investors are eyeing on.
I would like to add on top of that kind of two major trends that I think we see more and more startups playing in. One is obviously how advertising is going to make its way towards AA and AAA games, right? Native advertising coming in to create this ancillary revenue for AAA games, which hasn't been the case. It hasn't necessarily played out well yet. But with more and more sophisticated tools coming up in the market, we'll see how that will pan out, and more brands will actually take games as a platform to get exposed to this audience, right? So brands is obviously one consumption, but obviously you can scale that to everything else, from media, multimedia, to brand placements and whatnot, and fashion and retail industry coming in. So definitely that is a trend that we're seeing, and we're seeing strong. And then I would say, with us growing, and with this market growing to be more than $200 billion today, and probably will expand to be 10 times that size over the next few years to come, it is going to be a lucrative space for a lot of hackers. It will be a lucrative space with Web3 coming in, and wallets having all these NFTs and tokens in place. And it will be less of a focus on major developers, right? The shift for hackers will go from hacking all the big companies to hacking all these smaller pseudo companies, if you want to put them that way, right? And I think this is where cybersecurity will play an extreme role in keeping these games away from getting hacked, and players being safe. But then that also opens the conversation towards nowadays, if you're not cross-platform, you're probably missing out on tons of money and tons of opportunity. So how do you play a game on Nintendo but you continue playing that game on PlayStation? And then you move on to playing it on your mobile, and you continue playing that game there. I think this trend of cross-platform play, right, and enabling the user to continue their journey no matter where they play, I think is something more and more is gonna take center stage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tico, for talking about the trends and about the fact that the cross-platform is becoming more popular, and the fact that also some challenges also come with that. And we tend to end each episode with the part about advice to our founders. So given your experience in the industry, what would you advise to aspiring founders?
I'm happy to go first. It's easier. I found that this type of questions better to go first. I truly believe I think generally founders know this, but it's really also for the investor. I truly believe there is sometimes a myth about gaming industry that is like very hit or miss. I actually tend to disagree on that because of the following. I believe gaming is actually the teamwork and the constant iteration on a daily basis within the team, but also getting the feedback from the customers is the most important industry. It's like biotech and gaming, where it's not like you don't know what you're building, and you should constantly do your best to get feedback, even if it's a beta test on a small scale before you do a full launch. But generally, founders or some investors think, oh, like you never know, like it's really hit or miss until you launch. That might be the case if you don't iterate before. Of course, if you don't iterate before, by default, it's gonna be hit or miss. Uh, but like, if you know what you're building, do try your best of the best of the best. Perhaps across the market, perhaps in certain segment, perhaps in a university, perhaps as ethnicity. There are ways to slice it. The world is really your oyster. This is what we say. Like a do iterate before you formally launch, then it's not going to be hit or miss. Investors, what scares the investors the most, like if you're a founder, is that hit or miss. We're not gamblers. We take calculated risk. We take calculated risk. And I think it's really, really important as a founder to do your part, to give conviction, not only to the investor, but also to you and your team that you are not taking a gamble. But if you are not thoughtful enough, if you don't prepare enough, I think it will be a gamble. And that really is not the right risk anyone should take.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
I would say, my suggestion would be try not to, and that's the idea that was previously mentioned during our chat. Try not to follow any trends. Try to develop your own. Yeah. So, and by saying that, I don't mean that any idea shall be justified. So you need some math behind your opinion. But anyway, it's not a good idea to develop a thing that is already being developed by thousands of companies. Try making something unique, and try making something that you love to play as a player, not only to develop as a developer.
I would also advise, given all the current trends that we see on the market, the major is obviously a DFA thing. Think of your marketing strategy from the scratch. The earlier you start, the better. So think of the way you gonna go to market. Think of the way you're gonna promote your product. Think of it like once again, the earlier the better. Even before making the project, try to have a first feedback from the players. Show them creatives. Look the way they perceive what you are doing. Try to learn feedback. Right, it's very important. When you start making the game, try to build social communities of your game and around your games as soon as possible. Create social networks, very like Discord, all this stuff around your games. Try to build communities. The earlier you start, the better, because the communities, and it's like developing the idea that Shane and Roman said, the community will give you feedback, right? And once you receive feedback, it's not just hit or miss, right? You're constantly changing, you're constantly evolving, and at the very end, you can deliver what your audience wants. And that's extremely important, right? So it's also going around this Web3 thing, right? Because it's always about feedback. You're not only creating your game, right? You're creating a game that will also be a game of your players. They will also they will also continue creating your game, and that's extremely important. So marketing, building communities, receiving feedback, socializing.
Yeah, I'll probably wrap it up with reminding us and reminding the founders that, businesses do not succeed, people do. And if you look after yourself, you look after your team, eventually the entire business succeeds. And obviously that includes the customers and stakeholders in place. So remember to kind of stay humble, to stay close to kind of learning, and to look after your own people and your own team, hiring the best and executing, meticulously executing on that vision would eventually get you to take the right decisions, and to win at the end. Right?
Yeah. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you so much, Shane, Tarek, Kirill, and Rahman, for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this podcast. We really appreciate that. It's been a great experience to listen in and get your insights. And if you are a founder watching this podcast now, make sure you like and subscribe, and we will meet you again in the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a
you,
good day.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you,
Kirill. Thank you,
guys.
Roman.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Zeb.
Great
Was a
seeing you.
pleasure.
Thank you.